Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, What's New in OpenEdge 12.8. My name is Jessica Malakian, and I'll be today's moderator. So let's start by quickly introducing today's speaker. For today's webinar, we have Marie Candela from the OpenEdge Product Management team. Marie is currently a member of the OpenEdge Product Management team, providing a focus on data management. Marie joined Progress in 2006 to be the development manager for the OpenEdge database, a role she enjoyed for several years. Moving from development to release management to product management, Marie now gathers customer requirements, defines features and capabilities, and drives their rollout and delivery in releases. She encourages user feedback via idea submissions and the customer validation program, which helps Progress to shape new capabilities for all OpenEdge users. And now I'll turn it over to Marie to start the presentation.
Thank you, Jess. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here to present this overview of OpenEdge 12.8, which was released in January. 12.8 is a long-term support release, which means it will be around for quite some time. Here is the general outline of what I'll be covering today. I'm going to talk about how we built 12.8, building upon the past, do some highlights of some of the major features that are being introduced in the 12 series, a broader overall feature summary. We'll talk about next steps, which really belongs to you. And then I'll remind you of the long-term support versions, the retirement plans. We'll have a wrap-up and then do a live Q&A. I also want to set expectations. There's a lot of material here, so we don't get deep on any one thing. My goal for this presentation is to mention something that you are interested in, hopefully more than one thing, something that you will want to follow up on and learn more about. Okay, let's go. I want to take you back about 5 years ago. It used to be in OpenEdge that we would work on releases that would come out every 12, 18, 24 months, sort of a big bang kind of release. It would have a lot of new features, all new at the same time, all new to you, which would give you a backlog of new features to look into when really what you needed at the time was to focus on keeping your existing application working while you upgraded OpenEdge. You gave us feedback about this. It was just too much at one time. When we released OpenEdge 12.2, which was our latest LTS until recently, we also redefined our release lifecycle. A goal was to reduce the all at once, as well as to put out working software into your hands as early as possible so that you could give us feedback earlier. And this is what we've been doing to make our way to OpenEdge 12.8. When we redefined the lifecycle, we defined two types of releases. The first were the innovation releases. The focus on those releases is on agility and the ability for you, the customer, to innovate. They were shorter-lived releases, and they would retire when the next release came out. Our previous innovation release was OpenEdge 12.7. On the other hand, there's the long-term support releases, where the emphasis is on long-term stability. There's a multi-year support lifecycle that includes both active and sunset phases, and we're so pleased to announce that OpenEdge 12.8 was released in Q1 2024. The previous LTS 12.2 was released 4 years ago in April 2020. As always, we continued to build on that release. OpenEdge 12.3 through 12.7 were innovation releases, and they have provided new features to customers who are interested in moving more quickly to embrace solutions, particularly to their specific business problems. Each innovation release is production-level quality, and we have seen that they have been embraced by about 20% of the OpenEdge customers. Some of those customers are kicking the tires, and some put the innovation releases into production. Using this approach, by the time the next LTS, OpenEdge 12.8, comes out, the new capabilities that were introduced in each of the innovation releases has been exercised in development, test, and production environments. Plus, over time, there's been feedback to progress, leading either to bug fixes or feature enhancements, often in the usability or broadening capabilities perspective. Therefore, for our customers who prefer or require the stability offered in a long-term support version, this means that when Progress delivered OpenEdge 12.8, many or most of the capabilities will have already been used in real-world situations. What that does, if I were writing the article with the headlines for OpenEdge 12.8, I would write most of the new capabilities have already been proven in production by way of the incremental releases since October 2020. Also, I would write that upgrading from OpenEdge 12.2 is an install and go. Of course, you'll want to do your own acceptance testing, but there's no need to recompile. It's been available since January 2024. And what this does is it gives us the stability that's required for a long-term support release. I'm wondering how many of you are on a version prior to 12. Who's on 12.2? Either way, you're probably not aware of all the great things we've added to the product. Certainly, if you are one of the organizations that stays with the long-term support releases and you're on 12.2, there are a lot of great new things that you could be taking advantage of in 12.8. So what are you missing out on? Let me show you. This slide is to give you a visual of the new features added in OpenEdge Innovation Releases 12.3 through 12.8. Notice that some of the boxes are shaded in blue, and these are ones that are directly tied to our ideas community that customers participate in. Every single one of these boxes that's coming up reflects an entry in our feature tracking database. And so you can see there are several here. At one point I got curious and I said, well, I have to count these. There's over 150. And then I thought, wow, if I look at this as a cookie jar, if I had a cookie jar with 150 new cookies in it, I'd definitely be dipping my hand into that cookie jar and taking a taste. And that's what you have here, that there's a lot of improvements and you should take a look. I have a few key new features that I want to highlight here. These are new in the 12 series, and because of that, I want to give you a bit more background on what they're about. So we'll spend the next few minutes on these, and then we'll get to some more details. First up is Kafka, which is an event system. It is essentially writing events out in a real-time stream. It's also storing those events, and then people can subscribe to the stream and read those events, and they can process those streams of events either in real time or at any point in the future because they've been stored. Originally, Kafka was created to do activity tracking. Say if you're on a web page and you click on things or place orders or whatever, there's a flow of information coming that could be captured by Kafka and examined, doing processing depending on what has happened. It can also be used to aggregate your log files, and from a data processing perspective, it's highly efficient. The stream of data can go very quickly to wherever it needs to go, and then it can be used to do the processing on that information. And finally, Kafka can be used for sending messages. In the MQ capabilities that we have in the product, like Sonic and some of the open source ones like ActiveMQ, Kafka in many ways is a better replacement for those capabilities. So we support Kafka integration into your application. We can send messages from the OpenEdge application into the Kafka stream for other things to make use of. If you read the stream, you don't necessarily have to start with the very first thing and work your way through. You have the ability to pick any point in the stream to start. If you need to go back later and check things that are historical, it's all stored. So there's lots of flexibility in how you use the information. And then, of course, we can consume that information. Just like on a message queue, we can also read the streams if that's what the application needs to do. You can read events, read the information, and then take appropriate action based upon what has happened. Next up is the OpenEdge Command Center, or OECC, which is a cloud-ready OpenEdge management console capable of managing multiple OpenEdge resources and installations across various machines and versions of OpenEdge. OpenEdge Command Center is optimized for managing complex, high-scale, hybrid cloud OpenEdge deployments. Our older tools, OpenEdge Explorer and OpenEdge Management, are based on older technology, which is not so well suited for cloud environments where things come and go, like containers, for instance. So we've started over to have a cloud-first, cloud-ready console to manage your environment as a replacement for the older technologies. OECC is our next generation tool for monitoring and managing OpenEdge environments. It is browser-based, it has a responsive UI, which means that it can work on all kinds of form factors, including smartphones and tablets and your PC. It's fast, it's secure, its footprint is small, and of course, it's easy to use. There's also an API available so that you can do things programmatically if you don't want to use the interface that we're providing. The metric data that we're getting is for the systems that you would expect, the database and the app server. OpenEdge Command Center was introduced in 12.4, and it works with all 12 versions from 12.2 onwards. You should also note that this is a data collection capability. If you want to do analysis, you do need an application performance management or an APM tool. There are many on the market. Some are open source, so they're free. Others you need to pay for, but you probably get some additional capabilities. And you probably are already using one in your environment, if not for OpenEdge, for other things in your environment. So one of the major aspects of OpenEdge Command Center is management. It has a management console that will manage paths for OpenEdge instances and the OpenEdge database. You may notice that I've titled this slide OECC 1.3 with the version. OpenEdge Command Center is a new tool developed from scratch. It's released independently of OpenEdge and therefore versioned separately. As time goes by and later versions are released, I'd like webinar viewers to be aware that capabilities in this presentation are at a specific point in time. And at this time, we have our self-service dashboard. We have management for PAS-OE instances, the ability to create, start, stop instances. You can do PAS-OE configuration updates. You can clone your PAS-OE instances, which is really great because manually setting each one of them up, you might introduce human error. And we also have a single pane of glass type of view for your ABL applications. We also support management of the OpenEdge database, and we have the Open Standard REST API. The other side of OECC is the metrics ability. On this high-level architectural diagram, we have the OpenEdge side on the left. Very simply, the OpenEdge Command Center agent connects with OpenEdge databases and PAS-OE instances. Both of those types of entities provide metric information that the agent will harvest. The right side of the architecture is your environment, where you have an application performance monitoring solution, an APM. How do they connect? Well, we use OpenTelemetry for its metrics to connect the OECC agent to your choice of application performance monitoring solution for monitoring PAS-OE and OpenEdge databases. Why did we choose OpenTelemetry? You may recall in the past that we had a New Relic plugin for OpenEdge, which end-of-lifed in June 2021 because New Relic retired their plugin capability. This was a one-to-one tight integration of the OpenEdge application with New Relic's plugins. We have gone in a different direction with OpenTelemetry, which is not a tight or one-to-one integration. OpenTelemetry is the result of a merger of OpenTracing and the OpenCensus projects. It has the specifications we need for APIs, SDKs, and data formats, and it standardizes the way telemetry data is collected from a front end and transmitted to a back end observability APM tool. It is an observability framework for cloud-native software in a distributed and polyglot architecture, and it provides the ability to send telemetry data to multiple backends in parallel fashion. It's vendor agnostic, it provides flexibility, it has broad industry support and adoption from over 1,000 cloud providers, vendors, and end users. And therefore, we have embraced it as our strategy for the OpenEdge application monitoring solution. In essence, we're going to support a bring your own choice of APM tool. So finishing out the metrics side of OpenEdge Command Center, here's the very high-level eye chart of metrics that it currently supports, again, in OpenEdge Command Center 1.3. On the left-hand side is a series of OpenEdge database metrics. It's a number of summaries of the activity, after imaging, before imaging, buffers, records, etc. On the right-hand side, we have the paths for OpenEdge metrics. A lot of these are metrics for ABL applications on the agents, the requests, session metrics, connection metrics, etc., as well as transport metrics for web applications that are associated with the ABL application. This is the various transports, REST, SOAP, web, and app server. Now, speaking of OpenTelemetry, we also make use of OpenTelemetry's tracing functionality. Tracing is tracked by spans. A span is a named, timed operation that represents a piece of the workflow in a distributed system. I just want to clarify here, this is not part of OpenEdge Command Center. This is built into the AVM. As you execute, there are calls being made. You want to be able to trace the sequence of calls and how long it takes in each one of the procedures or classes or methods, etc. We can gather all that information because the OpenEdge platform has been, in a sense, instrumented to collect it. Any given thread of execution can be uniquely identified with the trace identifier. That is, that the trace identifier follows the execution, so you can have a complete view from when the client makes the call through the app server to executing the business logic and back again. Like many things we've done with OpenEdge, this is something that just works, and you don't have to make any changes to your application code to take advantage of this. All right, having said that, if you want to get more information about what's happening in your application that's outside of the platform itself, you can OpenTelemetrytize your application. This does require application code changes. And you can see an assortment here of where we have incorporated tracing connections. This is our initial offering with the OpenTelemetry tracing, and I'd fully expect that these possibilities will be expanded in the future. All right, let's move to security. A hardware security module, an HSM, is an enterprise-scale physical computing device that safeguards and manages digital keys, performs encryption and decryption functions for digital signatures, and provides strong authentication and other cryptographic functions. An HSM can be a hardware, firmware, software, or network device. To strengthen OpenEdge key store security, you may add an external enterprise-managed HSM component to the OpenEdge TDE encryption key storage security. TDE is transparent data encryption. The HSM storage, which may be a local network or cloud service, provides client access using the PKCS number 11 standard API. Also in the security area is dynamic data masking, or DDM, which masks sensitive data when displayed by the application at runtime. Administrators can use this to comply with data regulations and mask sensitive data fields from unauthorized users. It enables you to establish one or more users as a dynamic data masking admin, and it enables that admin to then define user permissions using configurable mask patterns. For each field to be masked, you identify the role, which is who can see the unmasked information, and specify the masking rule. DDM can be enabled offline or online, activated and deactivated. It supports a multi-site replication deployment, and the DDM schema can be dumped and loaded. If you are upgrading your clients and your databases at different times, which is something that we commonly see, DDM and the OpenEdge database also will prevent OpenEdge databases from releases earlier than OpenEdge 12.8 from accessing the DDM-enabled databases, and it will refuse connections to remote clients that employ earlier network protocols. And then I have a handful of other items that I want to call out. We've done many enhancements in the ABL, including the Safe Navigation Operator, which is also known as the Elvis operator. We have a new var statement, and in OOABL, we've added collections, support for 3 types: list, sorted set, and hash map. In the database, there's been significant performance improvements to some of the utilities, including the database backup and restore, and several index administration utilities: index check, index fix, and index compact. Much of this performance improvement has been done in these utilities with the introduction of threading. Also, we have moved more operations for managing database structures to be able to be done online to reduce the time you have to take your database down in order to do this management. We've also introduced the ESAM, the External Security Admin Manager. What this does is it securely stores and makes sure that the executables that you've laid down on disk have not been tampered with. It's the single source of truth for the executables. We support .NET 6 on Linux and Windows. Linux doesn't have the GUI that Windows does, but you can make your calls to other Microsoft services on Linux. For example, there's a lot of things you can do with, for example, scientific calculation or things that are built into the Windows libraries. So this provides the ability to do things that OpenEdge and ABL do not provide. Another area that we've focused on is PASOE management, maintenance, and support, especially in cloud environments. It was already able to scale up gracefully, and we've done some work to enable it to be able to scale down. For example, customers may want to clear out their PASOE agents, and there's ways to do that with the session decommission and agent scale down. And you can base that on session idle time, temp table count, or total agent memory use. We've looked at some of the key new features. Now let's turn our attention to the fuller set of enhancements in the 12.8 LTS. This slide may be familiar. It's our strategic themes slide that we've had for the 12 series. These themes have been in place for a number of years now. The story is that we've been working on this LTS for a long time, and these are the themes that we've been targeting since the introduction of 12.0. So we'll walk through these features from a theme perspective, seeing what we have accomplished in the 12 series over the last 5 years. Okay, before you get nervous, I'm not going to read every bullet on these slides. These are essentially reference material for you, and there are bullets in the purple font that were already mentioned earlier in this presentation. So the first theme area that we're going to look at is delivering on the promise of the platform. We have several items here that have been accomplished. A couple I want to call out is when you're doing your database conversion to move from 11 to 12, you no longer have to do a replication target rebase. Prior to this, which was introduced in 12.3, we would have to rebuild the replication targets, which was done with a backup and restore operation. And for the very large databases, that could take several hours or days. We now have the ability to convert from OpenEdge 11 to 12 without having to rebase those targets. We've also added in the backup files some descriptions of basic information to identify those backup files. If you have not done a thorough job of maintaining the source of your backups by the way you store them, what this does is it now makes it more smooth for you to understand what version a backup came from and to be able to find the correct one for what you want to use for the version that you're at. On Pro 2, we've continued to enhance Pro 2. We've made it much easier to upgrade and to migrate your information from older versions to newer versions. And then in general with performance, with every release, there are performance improvements that we're making somewhere in the product. Here's a sampling of some of the ones that we've done recently. One of these is Index Compact, where that process can get very long, again, depending on your indexing structure with your database and the number of indexes you had. So as your compact is progressing now, we've added several more status messages to allow you to have an idea of where you are in that process and if you're almost done. We've also added the option to clean up the unused index blocks. These tend to be blocks that are left over from deletes that have occurred, and what will happen is that over time they'll build up in the index tree. This is under the performance section because what we have found, especially for customers with several blocks, unused blocks, that once they have cleaned those out, they're actually seeing performance improvements in their online transaction processing. We've also improved the performance of the compression ability in the database backup. It reduces the amount of space from the previous compression algorithms we had, and it also improves performance on your backup actually being created with the better compression. Our second slide, delivering on the promise of the platform, we explore authentication. PASOE has been enhanced to support JWE tokens. Previously, it was just JWT, therefore they weren't encrypted. We have incorporated ability for OpenID Connect, OAuth 2, and SAML 2, all for the authentication and authorization. We've also created an OESEC tool. It's a CLI-based tool, which enables you to easily confirm that your authentication configuration for PASOE is as you intended. We strive to maintain currency on encryption ciphers, and that also includes the third parties. We have upgraded Spring in 12.5. We've also upgraded the version of OpenSSL to 3.1. That occurred in 12.8. Continuing to move on delivering on the promise of the platform. Reliability was our section that was left, but it really breaks down into two aspects. One factor on reliability is to make things go more smoothly, reducing friction in the system, if you will. One of the friction areas was when there's an issue with a PASOE agent, they have an identification, but if you're looking to see how that's manifested in the database, that identification was not easily linkable to the database user. But we have added that ability now so that you get both IDs together and can make that connection when you're tracing what's going on. On the VSTs for the database, every VST that existed that had a date time information in it, the format of that information in those fields was a string format, which meant that for you to actually do something with it once you received the value from the VST, you were going to have to parse it and write your own operations. What we did in 12.5 is introduce a parity of each of those fields that is now available in the date time, I believe date time TZ format. We did not take away the string format because then you would have to change your utilities immediately. So we now offer both formats and you can move to the date time format when it's good for you. On the availability side, earlier in the presentation, I brought up that we had several utilities move online, and they're all bolding now. There's online defragmentation of multi-tenant and table partitioning tables. There's an online simplified change of licenses. There's online truncate table, online truncate data storage area, Online schema changes, there are field drops, there are field adds, online schema support for the Delta DEF and the data dictionary, online removal of storage area, several online items. I can't emphasize this enough. The intent is with the online is to reduce the amount of time or the frequency that you have to take your database down to make changes. And also, there are performance improvements in that when you do have to take it down, that we've decreased the amount of time you have to take it down and get your system back online more quickly. Moving to the next theme, harness the value of the cloud. We have the continuous deployment section. This is the first time that I'm mentioning OpenEdge DevOps Framework, or OEDF. The OpenEdge DevOps Framework is comprised of a set of free Gradle plugins that lets you seamlessly transition between the development and integration environments when you build your ABL project outside of the Progress Developer Studio for OpenEdge or PDSOE. This framework will enable you to have the same environment set up for both your development and integration environments. OEDF was introduced in OpenEdge 12.2. It's a separate download. You will not find it on ESD where you download OpenEdge. You will find it as a download on the Gradle repository. It is version different than OpenEdge, which means that newer versions may become available separate from OpenEdge releases. We're currently at version 2.3 for the OpenEdge DevOps framework, and you can generate these deployable packages with it. It's also been upgraded to support Gradle 8. In the scalable area, we now have online BI growth management on the database. And then on the manageable side, we have the PASOE agent is able to initiate a graceful emergency shutdown, in addition to the scale down activity that we mentioned earlier. On the database, where we have the DB analysis and tab analysis commands, we now provide also the space usage statistics for LOBs, large objects. That's been missing, and that has been asked for several years. We have the ability with PASOE to create a trace file with deferred logging and call stack details. And then this is our last detail slide on this last theme of do more with OpenEdge. In the OOABL area, in addition to those that I mentioned earlier, we have methods as callbacks for server socket objects and for the run async statement, as well as SACS reader events. On ABL, we have the ability to now resize indeterminate arrays at runtime. They may be uninitialized prior to runtime, and when we do start runtime, we are able to create the size that's needed. On the development tools for PDSOE, we have re-architected the deployment tools or the development tools in PDSOE and continued to improve them in the subsequent innovation releases. We've created a new dependency module, and as that dependency module can get quite large and take time to build when we're initializing it, we've also reduced the initialization time in 12.6. Also, depending on what your next usage is of it, there are some operations you can do to start using it before that initialization has completed. Makes it more available for you to get moving with your work. We've also included a type hierarchy view for OOABL in PDSOE. This is our summary slide for the OpenEdge 12 releases. Again, this may be familiar to you. We have been building it as each release comes out, and we finally have on the right our 12.8 release that completes this slide for OpenEdge 12. This is so you can have a feel for some of the key features and the timeframes they were delivered. For those of you that have not yet made it to 12, note that there were 2 releases before we had the 12.2 LTS. Both of those releases are retired. And for those of you that are currently on 12, this gives you a good thumbnail summary of key things that have been delivered since that release. Okay, we've covered a lot of material here. So what are the next steps? With each release, we've had a What's New document. We also have a What's New in OpenEdge 12.8 document. What's really cool about this is that if you want to download the 12.8 document, you have the option of including all the previous information, so you can generate a full document that includes everything in the What's News from 12.0 through 12.8. That turns out to be about 140 pages, so it's not bedtime reading. But I'll tell you, it's a really great searchable document. If you have found items that I've covered in this presentation to basically give you the names of features, you can go ahead and search in that document and find out when they were originally introduced and when they have been enhanced in the 12 series. By the way, on this slide, I have links for these items, so you don't have to be taking notes. There's also a lot of great materials on progress.com. You should go to the OpenEdge 12.8 area and explore what's there. We have several white papers, videos, data sheets, as well as links to the documentation set. While you're there, you should consult the Platform Compatibility Guide. We used to call this the Platform Availability Guide, or PAG, but it's now been updated by its name. And also, we will have subsequent deep dive webinars, which will be happening next month, one each for developers, database administrators, and the business users. Finally, under the next steps, I want to emphasize that you need to continue to be mindful of the LTS lifecycle dates, which I happen to have right here. These are the retirement plans for the current releases that are long-term support releases. You'll see OpenEdge 12.8 has been inserted at the top of the chart. That retirement is out to the next decade, 2030. The one I want to call your attention to is OpenEdge 11.7. That retirement is scheduled for April 2025, which at this point in time is about 14 months away. So in closing, I would like to say, if you're on an older version prior to 12.0, you should be moving fairly quickly to evaluate and make your plans to get to 12. Again, keep in mind that 11.7 is going to be retired in about a year. If you're already on 12, thank you. You'll find that the upgrade to 12.8 should be completely seamless. You do not have to recompile. For the current capabilities in your application, they will continue to work. And finally, I'd like to give a big thank you to you, our customers, especially those who participate in the IDEAS community and/or the Customer Validation Program, or CVP. For those of you that are active in IDEAS, it's really great seeing you discussing and debating the solutions, and combine that with the voting capability in that community. It really helps us keep our backlog lively. That is a public community. You do not have to request membership to join. And what we like to see is customers debating amongst themselves on what the feature solution would be for their problem. And then, if you're also in the CVP, which by the way is a private community, which you do request membership to, but it's for the collaboration with us on the new feature development. You know, one of the tenets of Agile, we do Scaled Agile framework for our software development process in OpenEdge. One of the tenets is to get working software into the hands of your customers as soon as possible, so you can see if you're hitting the mark or if you need to adapt. And what we have is, between the CVP and our innovation releases, we have been able to do that all along in our journey to creating OpenEdge 12.8. I do have slides that follow. We'll show you how to sign up for each. So again, I want to thank you so much for your participation. I hope I did achieve my goal of giving you some items that you have interest in and you're going to go follow up and look up more. And I hope that you're as excited to move to it as I have been to tell you about it. Here are the 3 more slides of links. We'll just quickly bring them up. They're reference material for you. This is the IDEAS community. Again, it's a public, open community. This is the CVP, which you have to join. It's for active customers of OpenEdge. And then here's a series of links for a number of the 12.8 things that I mentioned. By the way, with that What's New document that you can generate for 12.0 through 12.8, one of the other benefits of that document is that as you get the little summaries for each of the features that went in, they will also contain live links into the documentation that's available on the hub. And now we're ready for the question session, and I'll turn things over to Jess.
Great. Thank you, Marie. Now we have Rob Straight here with the OpenEdge Product Management team for the Q&A. As a reminder, if you have any questions, please put those in the questions panel. I will do my best to get through all the questions we have in the time we have left. And if I'm not able to answer some of your questions, we'll be sure to follow up after the webinar. So Rob, are you ready?
I am ready, Jess. Let's go.
Great. So the first question is, does OECC come with the deployment license like OEE, or is it an add-on application?
So a good question there. So the Command Center is a product we've been developing fairly recently. As Marie spoke about, it's got some interesting new technology in it to monitor and help manage your deployed applications. OpenEdge Command Center has been and continues to be freely available for download and use. So that will continue, much in the same fashion that we currently offer OpenEdge Explorer OEE.
Great. The next question is, can we get an exported list of the items in the cookie jar?
Yeah, I hope everyone else liked that analogy of the cookie jar. It getting to be close to lunchtime here on the East Coast in the US, and now I'm thinking about cookies. So yes, the What's New document that Marie brought up and gave you a link to at the end, you can find it on progress.com. As always, navigate to the OpenEdge product line. There's a button you can push for 12.8, and everything is listed there for documentation, including what's new. And yes, you can get a full list of all the items that we have added as feature enhancements since 12.0 right through 12.8.
Great. The next question is, can web services using SOAP 1.2 be published with paths for OpenEdge in OpenEdge 12.8?
That's a great question, a very specific technical question that I simply do not have the answer to today, but I fully commit to getting that answer and sending it out to the attendees after this meeting.
Great. The next question is, how do I get access to 12.8?
Okay, so it's the normal process, for all of our customers under maintenance, which is pretty much everybody. You have free access to 12.8. Simply work through your account team, your account manager in Progress to place the license upgrade orders, and you can have access to it. There are alternative methods. So the OEDK that we provide, OpenEdge Developers Kit, has been updated as well to include all of the actively supported releases. So that does include 12.8, as well as, of course, 12.2 and 11.7. There's a third way, which is if you want to do a simple evaluation. Again, go to progress.com and navigate to OpenEdge. There's a button right there if you want to just try it out from an evaluation perspective.
Okay, great. Next question is, we are using Pro 2.5.5 on 11.7. Should we upgrade to 12.8 first or Pro 2.6.5 first?
Oh, that's a great question. Geez, I haven't really thought about that. I might think that you would upgrade your version of Pro 2 first, just to make sure everything's working as you would expect, and then take the next step of upgrading your OpenEdge installation. So that, off the top of my head, that would be probably the recommended process.
Okay. Someone wants to know, what happens to enhancement requests submitted in the ideas portal?
Yeah, so I hope everyone is fully aware now that we offer a public-facing ideas portal where people can suggest enhancements to the product. It's a great place to list your ideas, kind of explain what problems you're trying to solve or what your use cases are. Your peers and other companies can review and comment and ultimately vote which gives us here at Progress some indication of interest in particular features. So any new idea that's entered into the system is reviewed within 30 days by product management and engineering here at Progress. We then make decisions on, what seem to be reasonable requests versus ones we think maybe are outside of the scope of what we're trying to provide. And, if reasonable, we will mark them as, something we will consider for the future. And then it boils down to simply prioritization, right? We get a lot of requests for new enhancements, and it's work that could take us quite some time to fulfill every single one of them. So we do prioritize. Again, some of that is based on customer interest indicated through voting. There are other criteria that we do use to help prioritize features. We certainly would want to prioritize features that would have the most impact on the most customers, positive impact, of course. And then we action through the process. Once we agree to put it into our backlog and get it scheduled, engineering takes it on, develops it, we launch it in a release. If you participate in the ideas portal, you'll be privy to all of that status. So when we do change statuses, there are alerts that get emailed, and of course you can view it directly. So that's how we handle new ideas.
Okay, great. Is OpenEdge 12.8 reliable enough at this point to use on production systems, or do we need to wait some time while testing?
Well, the human inclination is always, wait, let other people try it out. I think Marie has done a good job kind of pointing out that the vast majority of new capabilities offered in 12.8 have already been field tested by customers over the last 2.5 to 3 years. Remember, we built 12.8 on top of 12.2, which was innovation releases, 12.3, 12.4, 12.5, and so on. So all of those have been now field tested, and if there were issues, they've already been reported and resolved. And from time to time, we do get enhancement requests. Maybe we overlooked a certain capability that might have made it easier to use the new feature, and we've taken those into consideration as well. We feel pretty strongly that 12.8 is probably the most stable release we have put out. It doesn't mean that it's 100% bug-free. No software is. And, as usual, if bugs are found, we want to hear about them through our tech support team, and we'll get those prioritized and addressed. So you should have confidence in going into production with 12.8 immediately. We have a fair number of our partners and customers who have plans to do exactly that here in the month of February, March, and April. So people are proceeding into production very quickly with their release.
Okay. Someone wants to know what Java versions are supported in 12.8.
Okay, so Java versions, we have gone to Java 17, which is the latest LTS when we were developing the product.
Okay. Next is, how frequently do you plan to provide bug fixes and security updates to 12.8?
So I think with any release, the cadence of bug fix updates, which could include security vulnerability mitigations, we sort of put them in the same bucket as bugs. They're going to come out based on the volume of bugs reported and the urgency and priority of getting those resolved. We do know that with 12.8.0 being brand new in January, there's likely going to be some fit and finish things. We know that there were some lower priority issues that we deferred from the 12.8.0 GA release to an update. So you should expect that updates will be coming out fairly frequently this year, as soon as this month in February. And then we'll just base, as the year goes on and certainly beyond, we'll base the update cadence on volume of need to put out bug fixes and patches for security vulnerabilities.
Okay. The next question is, there wasn't really any mention of Pro 2. What is happening with it?
Oh, that's a good question. So Pro 2, if people are not aware, is our capability to export data out of an OpenEdge database and to transport it either to a different OpenEdge database or to a SQL Server or Oracle database. You have full control over, what data fields you want to transmit. It doesn't have to be the entire database. Pro2 is being developed on its own cycle. Yes, it is part of the OpenEdge product family, but it is not directly tied to the OpenEdge platform and its releases. So you should expect, if you're using Pro2, you should expect future releases later this year. So stay tuned for that.
Okay, great. So this is all we have time for. Thank you, Marie and Rob. This was a great presentation. If we didn't get to one of your questions, apologies, but we will reach out after this call and follow up in the next couple of days. If you didn't get a chance to ask a question, respond to the email that will have ways to contact us, or please reach out via the Ideas portal or the CDP, and we'll be able to answer things a lot more quickly there. And thank you to everyone who attended today's webinar. And again, thank you to Marie and Rob, and have a great rest of your day.